Now, in addition to dealing with Mal murder, is it your testimony from earlier today that you also had dealings with Aljermiah Mack or Nuke? Yes. When did you first start getting involved in drug deals with Nuke? Around the time when I first met him. What year was that? 2015. Can you describe how things started in your first drug deal with Nuke? When I first met him in person, we talked about selling drugs together and making money. We came up with an idea where he was going to sell drugs that I would give him on consignment. Did you come to learn during your early conversations with Nuke that he had moved other drugs before meeting you? Yes. Can you explain that to the jury? He said he sold coke before and he sold heroin before. You said that you had talked about giving him Molly on consignment? Yes. Is there a term of art used for consignment that you guys used? On the arm. On the arm? Yes. How much drugs or how much Molly were you offering to give him on the arm during your first drug deal? I gave him 1 kilogram on the arm. What was the understanding? That he would pay me back $6,000 for 1 kilogram? Did that actually happen? Did you give him a kilo of Molly on the arm? Yes, I gave him a kilo of Molly in front of my house. One time he came in front of my building. I gave him a kilo of Molly on the arm. Is that your building here in Manhattan? Yes. Can you describe what happened during that meeting? He called me, said he was downstairs. I just came down. I had aluminum foil, X-ray proof bag, and I had it in the plastic bag. I gave him 1 kilogram. From there, he went on to sell it. Why were you giving him a kilo of Molly in an X-ray proof bag? That's how it would come. It would come in X-ray proof bags so that it could make it through customs. Do you remember the next time that you had a dealing involving MDMA with Nuke? Yes, it was one time in Manhattan when we were in a studio. Whose studio and what type of studio? I believe it was Phase 1 studio. What is Phase 1 studio? What kind of studio is that? I think it's a record label, but they had a recording studio there. And prior to going to Phase 1 studio, had you been paid by Mr. Mack for the $6,000 that he owed you for the first kilo of Molly? Not yet. Why were you going to Phase 1 studio in Manhattan to meet Mr. Mack? Because he had said that he wanted to buy a 1/2 kilogram, and then since he wanted to buy a 1/2 kilogram, he was going to pay me for the 1 kilogram later. He said that he was almost done with the 1 kilogram, but he wanted to buy a 1/2 kilogram cash up front. To your knowledge, he was reselling these kilogram and 1/2 kilogram? Objection. Sustained. Why meet at this Phase 1 studio as opposed to somewhere else? Because we were meeting up with a rapper named Frenchie. Why were you meeting up with a rapper named Frenchie? A rapper named Frenchie was robbed previously, so Aljermiah Mack thought it was a good idea to buy his chain back and give it to him as a gift back so he could do us favors. How do you know that that was an idea that Aljermiah Mack had? Because that's what he proposed to me. That you were going to buy the stolen property back? Yes. What was the property that Frenchie was robbed of? It was like a BSM chain. Were you involved in that robbery? No. To your knowledge, was Mr. Mack involved in that robbery? No. How were you going to be able to buy back the proceeds of that robbery? He knew the people that robbed him, supposedly. And what did you do or say in response to Mr. Mack proposing that you pay the robbers for the jewelry? Say it again. What was your response when Mr. Mack proposed that you pay for the jewelry that was taken from Frenchie the rapper? I went along with it. What's that? I said I went along with it. You went along with it? Yes. What did you do? I gave him $2,000 to get the chain back. Who did you give $2,000 to get the chain back? Aljermiah Mack. What happened after you gave Mr. Mack $2,000? He got the chain back and then he gave it to me to hold on to. What did you do with that chain? I gave it to Frenchie the day he told me to meet up with him in Manhattan. That's the day that you met Mr. Mack regarding this additional 1/2 kilo of MDMA? Yes. Did you or anyone else do anything to document this visit to Phase 1 studio with Frenchie the rapper? I mean, there's videos and pictures. There's a picture. I'm showing you, with Miss Harney's assistant, what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 501L. Do you recognize 501L for identification? Yes. What do you recognize 501L to be? Frenchie in the middle, and then Aljermiah Mack all the way to the right? More broadly speaking, is this a photograph? Yes. Was this photograph taken on the day that you went to Phase 1 Studios, and was it taken inside of that studio? Yes. And does it fairly and accurately depict the way the individuals appeared that day? Yes. I am offering Government Exhibit 501L for identification into evidence. Any objection? No objection, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Received. Your Honor, may we publish? Yes. Mr. Cruz, who is depicted on this photograph from left to right, starting with the gentleman in the blue hoodie with the red polo logo? I don't know who that person is. Who is the person in the middle? That's Frenchie. And do you see anything relevant on Frenchie's person? That's the chain we bought back. Can you please circle it on the screen with your finger? You provided that chain to Frenchie that day? Yes. Do you recognize the person all the way to the right in the photograph? Yes. Who is that? That's Aljermiah Mack. Other than giving Frenchie the rapper his chain back, what happened at the studio? At the studio? Did anything happen relevant at the studio after that? No. Where did you go next? Back to Aljermiah Mack's house. Who went there? Me and a couple of his friends. Couple of whose friends? Aljermiah Mack's friend. Did Mr. Mack go back to his house as well? Yes. Can you explain what happened back at his house? We just went back to his house to chill, and then after that I gave him... Actually, I brought 1 kilogram out in a book bag and money. Previously, he took photos of the money that I had gave him to take pictures with, so we went back to his apartment in Brooklyn. He took more photos with the money, and I gave him 1 kilogram in a bag, and I told him he gave me $3,000 for the half a kilogram he wanted to buy, but I told him he could keep the whole kilogram for doing the favor for Frenchie, because Frenchie was going to do us favors to make us money in the future. You mentioned something about photography of money. Can you please explain that? I brought out money in a book bag. I guess Nuke wanted to take pictures for Instagram of money. I let him take pictures of my money. Did you get any money from Mr. Mack that day in connection with any of the drugs that you gave him? Yes, $3,000. What was that $3,000 for? For half a kilogram that he was going to pay for. What did you do regarding the $9,000 debt? I let him keep it. Were those deals before or after you were personally a member of 9Tray? These deals were before. Do you continue to have drug dealings with Mr. Mack after he joined 9Tray? Yes. What drugs? That the fentanyl and heroin mixed together? What were you telling Mr. Mack that you were selling him? I told him I was selling him heroin. And did there come a time when Mr. Mack learned that there was also fentanyl in the drugs? Objection. Sustained as to form. You said that you told Mr. Mack that you were dealing him heroin? Yes. Was that always the case? No. Same objection, Judge. 1 moment. Overruled. Please explain. At one of the sales I gave him, he noticed that there was white spots in the brown heroin, so you knew that there was white spots in there. He said people knew. Objection, Judge. Quoting Mr. Mack? Overruled. The witness is quoting what Mr. Mack said. Overruled. Judge, he is testifying to what Mr. Mack supposedly knew. That's the issue. No, where the objection came, the witness had said he said people knew. When you said he, were you referring to Mr. Mack? Yes. Overruled. Go ahead. You started to answer it by quoting Mr. Mack as saying the people noticed that there was the F stuff in it, correct? Yes. Can you just please start from the beginning and tell the jury what it was that Mr. Mack told you during one of your transactions? The people that he was selling the drugs to noticed that it was white spots in the heroin, which means that I didn't mix the heroin up the right way. I didn't put it in the grinder and mix it up the right way so the color would be the same color. So he noticed that there was white spots in it. He said the white spots were the F stuff, which is fentanyl. Fentanyl is usually white. What did you say in response when Mr. Mack told you that the people to whom he was selling the drugs noticed that there were white spots that contained the F stuff? I told him, I said it was fentanyl, but that's the way I got it. It was fentanyl in it, but that's the way I got it. He said he didn't care because they still liked it. Did you represent to him that the product you were selling him also contained heroin? Yes. And did Mr. Mack continue buying this mixture from you nevertheless? Yes. Do you remember each of your sales to Mr. Mack of what purportedly contained heroin? It was multiple sales. Do you remember each of them? Most of them, yes. Can you please walk us through the ones that you remember, starting with the first one? Before you do that, can you tell us in what year did you begin selling these mixtures to Mr. Mack? 2016. 2016? Yes. Can you please tell us what happened with the first sale? The first sale, I gave him a sample. So it was a sample, like a small piece, for him to give it to somebody to test see if they liked it. He said they liked it, so he called for 150 grams. I made somebody else named Joseph Raffone go see him a couple of times. Who is Joseph Raffone? Joseph Raffone is one of my father's childhood friends. And what was your relationship with Mr. Raffone in 2016? Mr. Raffone was selling drugs for me, transporting drugs for me, everything I asked him to do. Is it your testimony that the first time Mr. Mack ordered heroin from you, you had it delivered to him by Mr. Raffone? Most of the time it was through Mr. Raffone. Let's start with the first one. Was the first one delivered by Mr. Raffone? Yes. Did you know from where Mr. Raffone was getting the heroin? From me. From you? Yes. Where? Where from me? Yes. In the apartment we had. When you say an apartment we had, an apartment who had? That me and Raffone had. Where was the apartment located? 1825 Palmetto, Ridgewood, Queens. How much heroin, to your knowledge, did Mr. Raffone bring to Mr. Mack during the first drug delivery? 150 grams. And what was the price that you were charging Mr. Mack for that? It was about 47 a gram, anywhere from 40 to 47 a gram. Do you remember what the payment was for the 150 grams? I don't remember. Tell us what happened. After that, did Mr. Raffone deliver the drugs? Yes. Did he deliver it on the arm or did he get paid up front? He got paid up front. How do you know that? Because Raffone would bring me the money back. And go on, what happened after that? After that, there were a couple of other sales where Aljermiah Mack would call me, and the same thing. I would just have Raffone go see him, Joseph Raffone go see him, and sometimes he would call Joseph Raffone, and Joseph Raffone would contact me and tell me that he was going to see Aljermiah Mack.